Ladies and gentlemen, it's now 4 o'clock, so we're going to make a start. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee here at County Hall on Tuesday, the 1st of February. Procedure at planning committees, I'll just run through the procedure that we go through when we consider a planning application. First of all, as chair, I introduce the application, make sure the members have seen the site visit videos. I then ask the planning officer to present his report, giving us any updates, changes to recommendations. We then come to the public speaking slot, 5 minutes for each speaker, and there's an opportunity for an objector, a local member, or an applicant or supporter. Then the members of the committee are allowed to ask questions to the planning officer, and then we start the debate proper. Ask for a proposal, a seconder, and then we debate the issue and take a vote on that application. So, apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies for absence for today's meeting?
Yes, I've received apologies from Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Minutes of previous meeting. The minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee held on the 4th of January 2022. They've been circulated. Are members happy that these are true and correct record of that meeting? Thank you. Disclosures of members' interests. Have any members of the planning committee here today got any interest they wish to declare on the applications in front of us? No? So then we begin with the determination of planning applications. Now, we've got 3 applications today before us, all of a similar nature. And to that end, I'm going to ask John Sharp, our planning officer, to speak to those applications. He's going to give one general presentation covering all 3, and then we as a planning committee will deal with each one separately. So, John, over to you for your fine words, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Just a quick couple of updates before we get started. Just to confirm that Natural England have responded to consultation, raising no objections subject to the appropriate mitigation being secured. They had responded to one of the applications prior to the committee deadline, but not the other 2, so those are now in with us. We've also received an additional 2 objections in relation to the Benthall application. Much the same as earlier comments, but in summary, concerns that the proposal would be out of character. The car park will become a campsite. There are plenty of campsites already in the area. Antisocial behaviour. That there is an organised lobby of support for the application. It's better to invest in proper facilities, and how will we enforce people not sitting outside their motorhomes, and issues around rubbish and recycling, etc. Just quickly run you through the presentation. If my mouse is going to work. Come on. Typical.
Out of range.
It was fine just a minute ago. Oh, there we go. Just waking it up. Okay. So we have 3 applications, all for the same thing. Change of use to existing car parks at Benthall in Beadnell, Amblebraid and Links Road car park in Bamborough, to allow individuals to sleep on the sites within their self-sufficient motorhomes. So this is the first one, location plan for the site in Beadnell. As I say, the existing car park just next to the beach at Beadnell Bay. That's the Amble Braid location plan, and the Bamborough location plan, which again it's the existing car park just across the road from Bamborough Castle. Satellite imagery there for Beadnell, and the same for Amble, and the same for Bamborough. The proposed location of the motorhome bays at Beadnell here, it is proposed that they are going to be within the existing overflow car park, so it's a grassed area just beyond the existing car park. At Amble, they are going to be within the existing car park, so as you come into the car park off the main road, you turn left into the car park going towards the Shore Base Trust, and they're just on that stretch. That stretch of the car park there. And in Bamborough, it is proposed to use the existing motorhome bays within that car park. Some site photographs from Beadnell, and the same for Amble and for Bamborough. There we have it. So the applications are for a pilot scheme which is to be run by the council in response to increased numbers of motorhome users visiting the county. Currently, people are only able to stay overnight on registered camp or caravan sites, which often have minimum stays of more than one night and aren't open necessarily in the low season. Anecdotally, this leads to tourists moving on to other areas such as Scotland instead of stopping and helping to support local businesses within the county. The applications also seek to manage the ad hoc overnight parking of these vehicles in laybys by encouraging them to stay where the council can manage them appropriately. As noted, there have been a number of objections, principally around amenity, antisocial behaviour and other non-material matters such as lobbying by motorhome owners and for whom there has been significant support as set out in the reports before you. The applicant has sought to respond to the concerns raised, setting out how the scheme will be managed and noting that concerns around litter, etc. can be addressed. Notwithstanding the concerns raised and subject to a coastal mitigation contribution being secured, the recommendation is for all three applications to be approved. It's considered that this is a positive proposal to manage a growing part of the tourism sector within the county. Thank you, Chair.
Of course. Rob Murphy.
Thank you, Chair. This is an interesting proposal. And I suggest that members see it in context of the way that tourism is changing in the county. And it is very much the case that during the lockdown period, we've seen significantly increased levels of domestic-based tourism. I have received personally lots of requests and questions to why the County Council does not allow motorhomes to stop overnight in car parks, and it's regularly cited that other local authorities do in areas where tourism is an important part of the local economy. We are uncertain about this proposal, not because of the principle as such, but actually it's about the practicalities of managing this. We haven't in the past allowed overnight stays in our car parks. And what we're looking at here then is very purposefully a 12-month pilot exercise, both to determine the overall level of likely demand and take-up, and then to look at lessons to be learned in terms of the management and any additional investment required to make these sites suitable for overnight stays. I'll leave it at that, but we're happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee, we'll now turn to page 17 and we'll deal with our first application, which is the change of use of the car park to an area of land to allow individuals to sleep over in self-sufficient motorhomes. And this is in the car park at Benthall, Beadnell Chat Hill. Now we have two public speakers. We've got a local councillor, Councillor G. Martindale, and then we've got a supporter, Eddie Yarrow, speaking in support. Councillor Martindale, you now have the floor, sir. Would you like to speak for no more than 5 minutes, sir?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak. As you can see from the officer's report, Beadnell Parish Council supports this trial as a potential part solution to address issues arising from the proliferation of motorhomes. We are concerned that our requests for modification to the proposal are not included as conditions in the officer's recommendation, and that is why I accepted this invitation to speak. At present, motorhomes are prohibited from parking overnight in Beadnell car park. There are signs advising the prohibition of overnight parking and sleeping. However, this is often ignored, especially in the summer months. This has resulted in many complaints and adverse comments from residents and visitors. The major reason for the complaints is that motorhome owners are seen to be abusing the car park amenity and getting something for nothing while not contributing to the local economy. The Parish Council welcomes the scheme and asks if our requests can be included as conditions in any approval. The Parish Council is strongly opposed to any groundworks of a permanent nature and requests that a condition is made whereby the ground will be repaired and reinstated if the scheme is not made permanent. I should add at this point that the ground comprises hard-packed sand with tough wearing covering of grass. It drains very well, and we have never had or never seen any significant damage due to the use of the overflow car park. We do not believe that any groundworks are required, and please note that the AONB has the same reservations. The Parish Council requests that the applicant be required to provide additional waste bins in the overflow area. The current 4 bins in Beadnell car park are already insufficient during peak months. Also, the Parish Council would like better to understand the criteria by which the success of the trial will be judged. Finally, we appreciate that a further application will be required if the scheme is to run after the trial period, and request that we will be fully considered and consulted. Thank you.
Sir. Now I'd like to invite Eddie Yarrow. You're going to speak for 5 minutes, sir, in support of the application.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eddie Yarrow. I was born and bred in Northumberland, and I live near the coast. I'm proud to be a resident of this county. I am a motorhome owner, and I have travelled in my motorhome for many years, holidaying both in Europe and the UK. I support these trials. Why? Because I know here and the UK in general is sadly lacking in motorhome parking tourism compared to Europe, which attracts motorhoming Brits in their thousands to enjoy the facilities. We are decades behind, and it's time to catch up. Parking along the coast has presented some challenges for local people, highlighted by staycation. These parking proposals will help control parking along the coast, including Beadnell. Beadnell, like other areas of Northumberland, has seen an increase of visitors in the last few years, including motorhome tourists who want to park overnight to enjoy the local scenery, facilities, and spend money in the local economy. Last year, a friend from Jarvisshire planned to stay for 3 weeks, travelling around Northumberland. He managed 3 days because there were so few places for short-term overnight parking for motorhomes. He quickly moved on to Scotland, saying he would never return to Northumberland until there were better facilities, and this, unfortunately, is a common story. It is a great shame and a financial loss to Northumberland that very many motorhome tourists, including those from Europe, drive straight through Northumberland to Scotland, where they are assured of a warm welcome and plenty of places to stay where they can spend their money. I would like to pass on some of the known proven benefits of having an heir in any community, including the proposed one at Beadnell. An air is simply an area for overnight parking for motorhomes, as in Europe. From a recent survey of nearly 9,000 motorhome owners, it was discovered that each motorhome unit spent around £47 per day in the local area on basics such as food, drink, and local attractions. This did not include retail spending for presents, souvenirs, or parking charges or fuel. So if you're using this formula, if you have parking space for 5 vans on 7 nights per week for only 35 weeks in a year, this would generate £57,575, and that is without adding a parking charge. In addition, motorhomes travel all year round, so this could provide even more income than I have quoted. I have also found where motorhomes are parked, this brings better security for nearby properties just by their presence, big reductions in vandalism, litter bugging and fly tipping, saving thousands of pounds in cleanups and security, as quoted by Northumbrian Water, who allow overnight parking. In fact, it's common practice for motorhomes to clean up an area when they first arrive and then leave the area without a trace. Northumberland is a beautiful county and is attracting more and more visitors. We need to manage this potential for growth and use it to reinvigorate our local economy, to help it to recover from the COVID pandemic and sustain it into the future. One good proven way to do this is by establishing areas for motorhome tourism, such as the one which is proposed in Beadnell. And finally, by establishing areas in Northumberland, motorhome users could have a more carbon-friendly option to stay in the UK. This cutting their carbon footprint by geographically travelling far less miles than going up to Europe. I hope this has been of interest, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Members of the Planning Committee, we're now at the stage now where we can ask questions to our officers. Any members wish to ask questions? Gyron Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. From the public speaking and the comments from the Parish Council, there's some comment on groundworks as part of the trial, but I can't seem to find any mention of groundworks in the actual application. Are there going to be groundworks, or are they just off grass?
My understanding of this, Councillor, is that the existing access onto that overflow car park is in need of upgrading. It's some notes received from Network Services who've submitted the application here, basically saying that it's repairs and maintenance of the access roads, which is long overdue and has been reported on several occasions by the trading concession on the site. So that's my understanding is that would be the limit of the works.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Reid.
Thanks, Chair. I guess the questions they're going to ask will cover the other two as well. So, but first of all, on page 19, the Parish Council's asking for some charges to be waived, but in the report it makes it very clear that motorhomes will have an integral WC. So I'm not certain why they seem to, the Parish Council seem to think the toilet block's going to be used when we're specifically saying it's not going to be. That's the first question. In the report, there doesn't seem to be any mention of signage at all. And one would assume that it's going to have, the signage is going to have to be changed or added to say this is where you can park. We welcome it. So I would have thought perhaps the signage would need to have planning permission if it's going to be there. The other bits and pieces. I've lost my train of thought now. So the other thing I wanted to ask about was the financial contribution of coastal mitigation service. Surely it's going to cost us more than £34.44 to invoice ourselves for that. So I would like I would like to know if that's all it is, then perhaps we should put a lower limit on how much it should be, a couple £100 or something. Anyway, how are we going to make certain there's only 8 or whatever the number is motorhomes allowed? How are we actually going to manage the space? You know, just because, you know, if the car parks are changed to saying you can park overnight, what happens if there's 10 there? How are we going to move people on? Are we going to fine them? So what's going to happen there? Are we charging for this at all? The car parks are usually up there. The coastal car parks are usually chargeable. So are people going to be charged for overnight? Is there any rule against people staying more than one night? And I think those were my questions, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair, if it's okay with you, we'll both answer these questions. Okay, let me go through them first of all, and to touch on what the public speaker said as well. We can look to supplement the conditions and to make sure that if something needs planning permission for the signage, it's covered. We can put on a condition requiring details of signage. Okay, that's the first standard ones. In terms of the comment about there not being enough bins, I'm happy to put on a condition, to recommend a condition requiring that a bin capacity analysis take place and work out what a reasonable amount is, and then the applicant can submit details to us about what they think bin space is required. In terms of coastal mitigation, this is a fairly involved issue in that we have an agreement with Natural England about managing the impact of tourism and housing growth on the international designation for ecology up and down the coast. What that requires is that impact to be offset by, in part, a contribution to a scheme which manages that, and it's the Space for Shorebirds scheme. To begin with, we looked at saying that this is actually only a 12-month temporary permission being sought, and on that basis it was perhaps not appropriate to even levy a charge. However, we regularly get challenged about the imposition of this charge, and to be completely consistent, because we are the applicant here with our different hats on, what we looked at is that when you look at this, if it was a permanent development, there definitely would be a contribution, and by permanent, we thought a reasonable interpretation of that was, say, 80 years. So what we did was look to levy 1/80th of the charge. On that way, if the scheme became permanent, which would require planning permission, we would charge the rest of it, and any other developer who wanted to run a pilot for, say, 1, 2, 3, 5 years or whatever, there'd be a very clear and established way of us seeking an appropriate contribution. Okay, over to John.
I think it was just the question about the toilets that was left there, Jeff.
No, there were a few more.
Sorry,
I'll
yeah,
refresh your memory. Do the toilets first, and then I'll refresh your memory about the rest.
How we police it, yeah. Certainly in terms of the toilets, yes, there is an existing toilet block at Beadnell. There isn't, I mean, there are some temporary portaloos at Bamborough, but there's nothing at Amble Braid. The intention is that this scheme will just be for those motorhomes that are self-contained, that have toilets, that, you know, they have wash basins and so on, and that therefore don't require to use any existing public facilities that are available. Yeah, the intention of the scheme is that people will have to book online via the council's website. When they do that, they will sign up to various terms and conditions that so only people using self-contained motorhomes will be able to book into the spaces. There will be, I mean, it's a maximum, I think it's 6 on this particular site. Once they're all booked up, that is it. If anybody else wants, was tempted to go and sleep on the site, then yes, potentially they could be moved on because they haven't signed up through this scheme.
And the other one was payment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. Yeah, there is going to be a charge for the scheme. Yes.
Would we be allowed to know what that is, or have you not decided yet?
It's not whether I've decided. No, I don't actually have that information in front of me, but my understanding is that there is going to be a charge for the scheme once it's implemented.
Okay, thank you.
I've now got questions from, first of all, Councillor Ball and then Councillor Richard Dodd. Councillor Ball, over to you.
Right then. A couple of my questions have already been answered, but I want to know, how will this have a knock-on effect on other local businesses that actually provide parking and charge currently? Is there any sites near? With regard only 6 spaces, are you going to have to police this? Because if not, there's going to be more than 6 people. If it's advertised that we're open for motorhomes, then you're going to have more than 6 on the site. And the other thing, when it starts with motorhomes, Scotland's open for wild camping. Are we going to open Northumberland up for wild camping as well? And because there's obviously an argument for that in Northumberland, because it is a very popular place. And I would just say that Beadnell is very popular for things like water sports. So at what time does overnight parking start and finish? Because there's people out at 6 o'clock in the morning surfing, and sometimes them car parks midsummer are jam-packed from first thing in the morning. So when does overnight parking start, and when will it be expected off-site?
Thanks. Again, that's not details that I have currently. I don't actually know what the current parking restrictions are on that car park, but presumably, the intention of the scheme is that, is for people who sleep in their vehicles at the moment. Okay. The Beadnell car park notwithstanding, because the traffic regulation order says that we can't park a motorhome in that car park. But, for the other sites, and presumably, I think for the overflow car park here as well, people can leave the vehicles there overnight as it stands. So the only difference that's happening here is that actually people are going to be able to stay in their vehicles.
Okay. Thanks for that, John. Yeah. In terms of impact on other businesses, that's a good question, but remember that the driving force behind this scheme isn't to take away camper vans on existing sites. It's to try and find accommodation for camping vans who either can't find anywhere or are parking ad hoc in unauthorised locations. Okay. The wild camping issue is also an issue which is debated in the national parks up and down the country, and that's a completely separate matter, and we have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. That answers the questions. It's okay.
Councillor Richard Dodd.
Yeah, I had an experience of a free car park type thing in Ponteelan, and someone had a big white van and they parked there for 15 years. My question is, on the back of that type of thing, is there a it might be in here, I haven't found it yet, a maximum, because we all know what would happen. Somebody will think, that's a cracking spot to park a camper van. We'll park it and we'll go up at weekends. Is there a length that, because that's abuse is the first thing that comes into my mind. Thank you.
Yeah, the intention of the scheme, to my understanding, is that it will be restricted. It's overnight or possibly 2 nights maximum that you'll be able to book for.
Martin Swinbank, sir. No, I've got Councillor Hill after you.
Thank you. My question is relating to waste disposal. Obviously, if we were, presumably, if we were granting permission for a campsite or a marina, for example, they would have to have waste disposal facilities. Obviously, with a boat, you would have a holding tank. You wouldn't want to encourage people to empty that out into the North Sea, so you would have to have a holding tank emptying facility. If we are encouraging people to use these, and obviously they have to have a loos on board and all the rest and be self-contained, are we going to provide public places where people can dispose of their waste and obviously take on board water as well.
Yeah, it's not the intention of this pilot scheme, Councillor Swinbag, to do that. I think, you know, going forward, I think that's probably something that does need to be considered, certainly. And in places like Beadnell, where you have the existing toilet block, it may be a simple win to, you know, to add that to the existing facilities. But as part of this pilot scheme, it is purely the intention to allow self-contained vehicles, and you know there would be no facilities available of that nature.
And actually, I recognise there's a question that we haven't answered yet, and I think it was the public speaker said, how are we going, you know, what criteria will we use in judging the effectiveness of this 12-month pilot? And it's about understanding the likely level of demand for it, on one hand, because that could, say, justify the need for us to set up purpose-built facilities. But also, it's for us to understand what the requirements for infrastructure may be. But just to clarify, as part of the booking arrangement online, people will need to confirm that to use these sites, they will need to be self-contained, and that's the whole point of why these locations are deemed to be acceptable for this pilot. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Councillor Georgina Hill.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. First of all, just about the car park itself, what's the current conditions on it for a car? Is it 3 hours free parking, no return, or what's the current situation? What you're allowed to do as it is as a normal car? That's what I was saying.
It'll be standard as across the free parking that we have throughout the council. Isn't it?
Yeah, it varies from car park to car park, and
Yeah,
town centre car parks normally have a 3 hour.
Yeah.
Most of the coastal ones do not have the restriction on it, but some do. If that's not a So
the Beadnell one is paid
yeah,
display.
yeah.
Actually,
So the Beadle one does.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. The Amble one has no duration apart from no overnight on it. Okay.
And the second question, it's probably not absolutely directly a planning consideration, absolutely directly, but one thing I always concern when we have applications like this is around the enforcement and weaknesses in our enforcement. Do you have any idea how many fines have been issued, say, in the last year or 2 years for people parking overnight in car parks? Because I know whenever you say, and when there's instances of people cooking and doing other stuff and camping in areas they can't, they go, well, how do you know they're cooking? I mean, you know, the smell, you could smell it. They could have picked up some fish and chips and you just smelt it, or they could, you know, they don't seem keen to enforce, and you can see where I'm going with this. It would be interesting to get the stats. I suspect it could be surprisingly close to zero.
Yeah, can I add to that one? Is that yes, there's an issue in terms of the enforcement of parking restrictions on sites, and we do monitor and check sites, but there'll be an additional regime over this. In addition to the parking restrictions themselves, there'll be planning conditions on that, and we will work, the planning teams will work with the other teams of the County Council to set up a enforcement and management protocol for this, because equally they don't want to be called out on false alarms each time someone is there, you say, eating a bag of chips. Okay.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. I understand this is a temporary pilot scheme to assess the viability of such an offer we can make in the county. I think we've probably underestimated the need in the peak season. I don't know about the off-season. But the more I listen to members' questions, the more it becomes clear that the management of this thing is going to be crucial. And it's going to be crucial for a lot of the reasons, a lot of the questions members have asked, but also to see if it's going to be worthwhile expanding in the future. The point I would make about the bins is,
Remember, you're asking a question, Councillor Robinson. We're not into debate yet.
absolutely essential that we have the bins, because these things generate different waste to a picnic. These are domestic waste things. So I think it's absolutely essential that you have a bigger capacity bins on each of the sites.
Thanks.
Is that something we can consider? Is that the question?
That'll do. I think you've turned your speech around to
Yeah.
ask your
Chair,
question.
sorry, Chair, can I just come to that point? And yeah, this is almost a question which we're asking here, in that we have no experience of running these sites, and it could be that we're already looking to over-control them, and actually it won't require that level of ongoing control and enforcement we're talking about. Equally, there will be things exposed as part of managing this that perhaps we hadn't anticipated, and that is the entire purpose of doing a pilot. I think it's worth, if this is the end of the question session, for me just to restate is that there has been a fairly consistent level of communication with me about the latent demand for this and how this would represent an important leg of this county's move towards a more modern form of tourism and changing to reflect tourism pattern changes. Because there are lots of other things that we could talk about if we had an extended session on this, because I think when the public speakers mentioned this, at the moment, it isn't just people coming to the county, it's people driving through on long trips, say going to Scotland, who would perhaps want to stop over for a night here, say in Amble, and go for a meal, and to break a long journey. But at the moment, many people perceive that that isn't an option. So it isn't just a case of people coming here as a destination. There are other opportunities, but we do not know the likely level of usage on that. So this is why we've looked at 3 12-month pilots in 3 different parts of the county. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hutchinson, a question?
A question. Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of questions being asked about these caravan sites. Have officers asked any other authorities what they are doing there with their sites that have them anyway?
Yeah, I can answer very quickly. Yeah, we've looked at the arrangements in place in different parts of the county, and I think it's fair to say that there is both a more relaxed and a more prescriptive approach in different parts of the country. Again, this is why we're looking at a 12-month pilot to understand what the impacts and pressures will be in a particular Northumberland context. But we have looked at other authorities, yes. Okay.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to some of the questions that have been asked with regards to, will we have adequate bins, etc., for waste? Is this something that will be reassessed after the 12 months, or are we going to be more reactive during those 12 months? And if we see something that can be improved, that wouldn't need planning permission to implement that there and then, can we be reactive as we go along so that we're seeing the true effect of exactly what is needed, how it's utilised, so that we can have a look at it in 12 months' time and then have a better picture of what's needed? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. No more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Would someone like to move a proposal? Councillor Guy Renner-Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. We'll move approval of the application with the additional conditions that Rob Murphy pointed out, and a condition to, as pointed out by the parish and the AOMB, to restore any groundworks relating to the scheme out with general maintenance of the car park.
And Councillor Hutchinson, are you seconding that proposal?
I'll second that, Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify first the the conditions that Rob mentioned? Is that in respect of bin capacity assessment and signage?
Yes.
Is that, yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Richard Dodd first.
Yeah, I think we've all seen the extra motorhomes in these last couple of years that are travelling our roads but we cannot ignore this. And, you know, I think there's some opportunities for other landowners to probably do a seasonal job somewhere along the line. So we should be looking to, you know, no, not me, I'm not in the tourist hotspot, but wouldn't think of that. But we cannot ignore these things, and the coast has become very, very popular. Only on Sunday gone, it was a bit sunny when I set off. I thought, oh, we'll have a go to the beach at Blythe. It was rammed, couldn't get parked. So I went down the coast, right the way down to Tynemouth and all that. Everywhere was rammed on the 30th of January. So, you know, what's it going to be like on the 30th of June? So I think we cannot ignore these things, and we have to be positive. I did the part of the tour of the NC 500 last summer, which is a North Coast 500 route, and that's rammed with motorhomes and everything else. So it seems as if it's going to be a future that is going to be in the UK for a good while. Let's grasp this, but it is a nettle, but let's make sure we do the right things and get the facilities right and get some money in the tills. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Darwin.
Thank you, Chair. I was quite surprised to hear that this wasn't already in place, actually, that Northumberland, that tourism is passing up straight to Scotland. So I quite welcome this proposal on all three sites. I think it's a fantastic. We've heard by one of the public speakers just what this can bring to our area, and I think it'll benefit Bede and the other places that we want to go ahead with as well. And the purpose of this 12-month trial is to answer some of the questions that members have quite rightly raised. I think, you know, some good questions that have been raised, and a couple of questions I had were in relation to the bin and the type of disposal, but we aren't looking to empty certain types of disposal during this 12-month period. That could be looked at again in 12 months' time, and I think it'll be a great success, and I welcome this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Georgina Hill.
Thank you. I'm a little concerned about this because I agree with what's been said in the sense we're getting more and more visitors, and that's going to continue, and there's not enough accommodation, and it's always disappointing when, you know, it's happening in Berwick and it's happening elsewhere that people can't have anywhere to stay for it. And I get that. I'm just don't know why we're not more ambitious, and if we're comparing with other local authorities, there'd be local authorities in areas where they don't have so much available land, and I would much more prefer to see proper facilities, in a proper area, than having 8 stuck in a car park, to be honest. And I think there is inevitably a friction with residents in that situation, and it's, you know, the argument that the speaker made comes up a lot when you say, and it's similar, this happens a lot when you talk about dog mess and things. People go, but there's dog owners, lots of responsible dog owners, and they not only pick up their mess, but they pick up everyone else's, and that's true. But there are also people that don't pick up the litter. So as a collective, more activity like this means more problems like litter. So I'm not sure what to do about it, because I support the idea, but I think we need to be much more ambitious and proper facilities rather than putting car parks. I don't think the enforcement will be there. I can just envisage more conversations. Somebody's been parked there, you know, for 10 days. There's meant to be 8, there's 20, because they do, the camper van community and the websites and stuff, here's a really good place to park, and then it becomes known, and then everyone else wants to come there. And I can just see that there's going to be more than 8, and it's not going to be enforced, and they're going to say, how do you do the camping? It's difficult to prove, we can't be bothered to deal with this. So that's my concern. I think I understand the problem, I understand the need, but I don't think this is the right solution.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I fully support this application. In Camas, we had 3 car parks with no signs on at all, which meant anybody in the ante could do whatever they wanted there, and nobody could move them on. That's why one of the first things I did as an elected member was get signage there, and that signage now regulates the situation. I mentioned cameras, Chair, for a reason. Back in 2020, 2021, we had a coastal conference in the whole of Northumberland, from Berwick down to Seaton Sluice. I was fortunate to attend, and I'm sure some members sat here today did as well. I'm very aware many parish councils did. And a lot of the questions that's been asked today were asked then and answered then. There was strong lobbying from the motorhome fraternity. I'm not convinced by all the arguments. I am convinced neighbourhood services will be able to determine whether we need an extra litter bin, whether we need a toilet cleared, whether we need a repair done, whatever. There's nothing new about that. There is a lot of motorhome facilities within the county, Chair. They're on caravan sites. They're already there. This is new for the county. I wish this application was for more motorhomes. I'll be honest with you, and I've never been in one in my life. But I'll tell you why. At the coastal everywhere, there was human waste everywhere. As Councillor Wendy Patterson said, if they could have parked in trees at Newton, they would have parked in trees. It was that bad during staycation. And let's be honest, it's been caused because of COVID. We have to grasp this opportunity and say Northumberland is open for tourism. From Seaton Sluice to Berwick, the whole coastline is open. And I'll also include the of the county as well is open for motorhomes, and I wish to see more of these amenities throughout the county. It'll work, it'll regulate, and let's hope after COVID's gone, the visitors keep coming to Northumberland. And it's interesting, it's Beadnell first on the agenda, having won the competition for being the best place to visit and to live in Northumberland. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Ball.
Thank you. So for me, I'm a little bit in turmoil with this one, because part of me says I don't want to see car parks absolutely chock-a-block with motorhomes overnight and then tourists not being able to get into them by the day if they're stopping over for a couple of nights. But then on the other hand, we have the need in Northumberland as well. So it's like I'm having that inner turmoil. Do I want this to be extended to more than 6 bays? Do I want it to actually be a facility somewhere else within the area, that because it could ultimately be a business opportunity, because the demand is there. So I just want, as part of this pilot, the information that we're going to gather for it. So not just that the 6 bays are absolutely block solid, but actually how many extra people would want that facility. So we can see if there is a business need for, and how many people would actually need it, whether it be a bank holiday, so we can see the trends over there, and also a follow-up with users. Would they want to come back? Is there something that's missing? And again, I just have a little bit of concern about the policing of this, because 6 bays, it's not going to have that much of an impact on things like the bays elsewhere, because if they're full and they can't get booked in, nothing's going to stop them. So I think the information on the fines would be quite a good, and also not just the number of fines that are given out, how many spot checks have been done? Because if you turn up and the 6 bays are full and it turns out there's another 6 camper vans, but nobody ever polices it, then actually what's the point? Because no enforcement, people will park there. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm cognizant of all the problems that are associated with this thing, but basically I agree with the speaker that who said we're playing catch up with continental Europe, and we certainly are. We should have grasped this years ago. The one thing I tell the people I mentor on business startups is the first rule is do your homework, do your market research, and that's exactly what we're doing here. And I commend the way this has been handled, because that's the right way to do it. So that I'll be voting for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. Just to remind everybody, this one's for 8, not 6. Again, I'll echo what most people have said, that the enforcement of this is going to be the thing. And I don't think that that'll work out the way we think it will. but you know, we've got to try these things. And I know it's not a remit of this committee, but I would like to know how much it's actually going to cost us to do this. You know, I don't think there'll be a return. This will not turn a profit, I don't think. So we need to decide whether we have an appetite to subsidise motorhomes or not. I realise, you know, the wider economy will benefit, but, you know, the council itself will be spending money for no good reason, really. I will be voting for it, by the way.
Any more questions? Oh, Councillor Lang.
It's
network service.
Alan, if that's okay to answer this, this development requires planning permission, as does any change of use, be it temporary or permanent. Separate to that, our local services directorate will be running this as they run and manage the car parks at the moment. Okay, but we are just looking today at the acceptability of the pilot for the 12 months on planning grounds, and just to add on, the evaluation at the end of that process, at the end of the pilot, to whether this is actually worth doing in this format or in a different format or not worth doing at all, will be reported to the relevant cabinet member. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I ask Gary Thompson to conclude this debate, I just wanted to say a tiny few words myself. I do think these motorhomes are part of the tourism of the future. You know, as Councillor Robinson said, these parks are already established across Europe. We've got them in America. And our friend, Mr. Yarrow, told us, you know, how much we're missing out by not having the facility here already. And, you know, tourism is so important to Northumberland that we don't want to miss out. We want our share of the cake as well. But like Councillor Judy Foster said, it is the management and that reactive management. You know, we want this pilot to work, and for it to work, you know, I think we have to be reactive as it goes along. But, you know, I do support our planning people and the people behind this idea, because I think we are pitching it right. It's a temporary permission. It's small to start off with, and we see how it goes. And then if it's a success, then, you know, it can be spread across the county and enlarged. The chair's in favour. Councillor Gary Thompson, would you like to finish off, sir?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair.
Of the motion.
I support this because it's a temporary permission. If it was an indefinite permission, I'd be asking for a condition to make it a temporary condition. A lot of the questions that have been asked today will be answered by the trial. The trial, which would have already started last summer, had the council not realised at the last moment that it needed planning permission for this trial to go ahead. In terms of the enforcement of it, that is the key. This is in part an admission that our previous enforcement procedures haven't been working, because on any given summer's day you could turn up and there'd be 30 caravans in Beadnell car park. The traffic warden, to their credit, would be there every morning, would put a £20 ticket on the motorhome, and they would pay that happily because it was cheaper than the local than any other local site that they could go to. So we were fighting a losing battle in trying to stop them coming here anyway. You can't put physical barriers on this car park because it's used for coaches and it's used for the operation of a boat launch. So you can't have height restricted barriers like you do, say, at Spittal. So there are lots of positives to this that have been talked about already. The people coming, spending money. It's a trial. We'll see what happens, but I anticipate it to be a success. But there'll be a full trial. It'll go through scrutiny committee and it'll go to cabinet. So we're just the first loop to jump through for this to go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Chair, shall I clarify what members are voting on?
Yes, that would help.
It is for granting of permission for a period of 12 months, subject to conditions plus 3 additional conditions in respect of bin capacity assessment, signage and restoration of the land, with the exact wording to be delegated to the Director of Planning in consultation with the Chair, and also a financial contribution towards the Council's Coastal Mitigation Service.
Thank you very much. All those in favour of that recommendation? Thank you. All those against? Abstentions? 1. That planning application temporary permission is passed. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now go on to our second application this afternoon, and this is change of use of the car park to the area of land to allow individuals to sleep over in self-sufficient motorhomes, and this is Amblebraid Car Park, Amble Marina, Amble, here in Northumberland. We've already had the presentation, we had it at the beginning, so we go straight to public speaking. And we've got 2 public speakers to this application. We've got a local member, Councillor Jeff Watson, and we've got a supporter, Tracy Barkwell. Jeff Watson, can I ask you to speak, sir, for no longer than 5 minutes on this application? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Lots of things that the councillors have said and asked, I've noted. And it's been quite right that why we're doing this is a result of a coastal summit that was held some years ago when all the parish councils involved along the coast acknowledged the problem that we're having with looking after camper vans. It was known that camper vans were parking regularly and were parking illegally, and they wanted to do something to make sure that that was stopped. In the Amble car park, which actually, just for clarification, isn't in Amble at all. It's in Warkworth. It's in Warkworth Parish Council. That's why you've got both Warkworth Parish Council and Amble Town Council expressing opinions. Perhaps for the record, I should say that I am a Warkworth Parish Councillor and an Amble Town Councillor, but at both of those meetings, I didn't take part in any of the conversations. Lots of things that have been said would have been, I think, answered if we'd been able to have the information that I have, which I don't seem to have come out really. These sites are for the trial period, obviously. We're looking at it as a pilot. We want to see if they work. They will be easier to invigilate because the current situation is impossible to invigilate. How do you know that a camper van parked overnight has had somebody sleeping in it? Because at the moment, there's nothing illegal about parking a camper van overnight on Amble car park, as long as you don't sleep in it. So how do you invigilate that? Do you turn up in the morning at 6 o'clock and knock on the door and say, have you got your jammies on? You know, no, you can't. No, you can't. You've got to invigilate this, and the way we can invigilate this is by they have to book these 6 sites on the phone or on a website. It has to be registered with a registration number. The car park warden can come along and see the registration numbers, and if it's not one of the ones that's booked, you can give a ticket. Much, much simpler. Some of the questions that have been asked as well about antisocial behaviour. Well, I'm not aware of antisocial behaviour from camper vans. In Warkworth, we have a car park where we allow people to park overnight, the parish council. It has no facilities. We've had no reports of antisocial behaviour. We've also had no reports of this dirt that people are talking about. If you're buying a camper van, £50,000–60,000, are you going to poo in the grass? I don't think so. I think you're going to do it properly in your caravan, aren't you? And that's, you know, people are just overestimating that issue. I think we missed some points in that. In Amble, for example, you can park for 3 days maximum, but we believe that on this camper van site, it'll be 2 nights. So that will be invigilated as well. I think it's a pity in some ways that we didn't get more details of how the thing was going to be running so that councillors would know about it. But I think if you'd spent as much time as I have done looking at this and pushing it through to make sure that all the sensible things that you've all been saying are actually going to happen. Of course we're going to have adequate bins. You know, we're not going to have bins flowing over, because as soon as that happens, the council's going to get on to public people and say, can we please get these bins sorted out? Of course we are. It's a pilot scheme. We're learning from it. I can assure you that we are looking to do this right. We know also that camper vans are not, well, the visitors, yeah, but a lot of them are Northumbrians as well, you know. A lot of people that come to Amble to stay overnight come from, I don't know, Cramlington or Hexham or whatever. And they are Northumbrians. And they're all, in my opinion, decent people, a good cross-section of the public. And I want to encourage them. And I think it's absolutely right that we do what we're doing. I've got no things to add to the site for Amble, except maybe to say I didn't get the flood one, because the Environment Agency is saying something about the flood risk, and because the caravans are going to be staying there. Well, they're not caravans, they're motorhomes, and as soon as there's a bit of water, they'll drive away, won't they? I mean, is that not a nonsensible objection? I don't have any objections, and neither do my parish councils, really, if they'd had all the information that, unfortunately, didn't have at the time. So I encourage members to vote for this unanimously this time, I hope. Thank you very much.
No pressure, Councillor Hill, no pressure at all. I would now like to invite Tracy Barkwell to speak.
Thank you, Chair.
Over to you, 5 minutes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Tracy Barkwell, and through the course of my life, I've lived in Durham, Northumberland and North Tyneside. I currently live in North Tyneside and have a static caravan in Northumberland, as well as a motorhome. I love living in the North East, and I'm passionate about supporting the economic well-being of our region. I strongly believe there's never been a better time to recognise the potential income from motorhome tourism. Ownership in the UK alone has almost doubled over the last 2 years, with large numbers of people rediscovering the idea of staycation. We need to harness this upsurge quickly before people give up on us and simply miss out our region and go elsewhere. Contrary to popular belief, most motorhome tourists do spend money in the local economy, frequenting independent food outlets, testing locally produced foods, and shopping for everything from clothes to pet treats is all part of what we enjoy. We also enjoy participating in activities. For example, last summer, my husband and I went paddle boarding from Amble, then for fish and chips and ice cream. Had we been able to park overnight, we would have also enjoyed an evening meal at a local restaurant and some drinks, then breakfast the next day. Over the last 2 years, a small group of motorhome owners, average of 6 units, trialled 4 separate single night stays at pubs, farms, etc. in the more outlying areas of Northumberland and calculated a group spend which equated to £1,244.39. Recently, local councils in Cumbria created a motorhome tourist route with the aim of drawing motorhomes away from honeypot areas and redistributing the tourist spend to less popular areas. This is reported as working very well. It is well known in the motorhome community that at times the public, or more specifically the media, attribute antisocial behaviour to motorhomers. Whilst we accept there will be exceptions to prove the rule, the vast majority not only dispose of their own litter and waste appropriately, but strive to leave the area cleaner than they found it. A group called Motorhomes and Campervans Against Litter was established last year and has grown exponentially, clearing up litter from one end of the UK to the other. Furthermore, research shows that the natural surveillance motorhome owners provide can deter antisocial behaviour such as boy racing and fly tipping. An added bonus of charging for overnight parking is that it will deter undesirable people from parking there, and the revenue raised could be used to police misuse. Motorhome tourists are very happy for barriers to be lowered overnight. I am a member of the group Camper, and I know that the group is very happy to support the council in any way possible. We are currently advising Durham County Council as well as other councils and authorities around the UK. I just want to add on to the end of this speech a couple of answers to what's been raised so far. The reason why we prefer not to use campsites all of the time, but be assured we do use campsites as well, is that A motorhome's a large vehicle to drive, so what we like to do is park within walking distance of a town or village, and then we can walk into that town, have a drink, have a meal, walk back to the motorhome. If we stayed on a campsite, we would take our own food or buy food at the campsite, and the local businesses would not benefit from that. With regard to waste disposal, I know you've mentioned this as something for the future. A central waste disposal point somewhere in Northumberland would be enough, and you would be able to provide signage to say your nearest waste disposal point is at, and you can charge per use. Other councils do this. Research shows people are willing to pay around about £5 per use. So a local service station, petrol station would be perfect. Supermarket. So you drive through like a car wash. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, now your opportunity to ask questions to our officers. Any members got questions they would like to put? Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering why we settled on these kind of low numbers for the trial, because particularly here it doesn't look as though we're spending anything on infrastructure at all. So I can see the sense of the 8 at Beadnell because you've got to do something. But here it doesn't look as though we're actually going to spend any money. We might be putting some white lines down, but I just wondered why it's 6 here, and, you know, why aren't we going big, as everybody seems to think we should be?
Yes.
Thanks,
Rob
Chair.
Murphy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is a finely balanced exercise, Councillor Reid, in that the main point of the pilot is to judge the impact of this activity and what we would need to put in place if it was to continue on a permanent basis. But also, though, and this has almost been touched on by some of the other speakers and questions today, is these are operational car parks as well, and it is likely that people will turn up to stop, not just in the evening period, and then they'll turn up the afternoon as well. And so if we increase the numbers, there were concerns that it could unduly restrict the amount of parking available at those sites at peak times. Again, though, this is very much a matter to be evaluated during the pilot, and so we purposefully took the decision of not to allow the car parks to be dominated by camper van usage, but just introduce it as a pilot exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Ball.
Yeah, just 2 quick ones. How much will it cost if you were to book it overnight? And in relation to that, how much would the fine be if you didn't book it overnight and you just stopped there anyway?
That's
Councillor Rob Murphy.
Yeah. Can I just say that's not a material planning consideration, but we will need to look at setting an appropriate charge as against an appropriate fine. Okay, thanks. But I've got information in front of me about that, and we may need to adjust fines rates and charge rates as we go along. Yes. Yes.
Councillor Hill.
Thank you. It's a general question, but the whole theme of this is the general principle of what we're looking to do. Just talk me through what would happen. So in the event, and it seems with the public support, there does seem to be public support in these areas that would suggest that they've been well chosen sites for the rollout. If it's deemed a success, is that going to be therefore policy all Northumberland County Council car parks, or is it going to be each one considered on its own merits with an understanding that there's different issues, sensitivities, one of the things I would say, I have to say this, I totally agree with the point that motorhome users inevitably bring money to economy. When people argue they do it, that's nonsense. Of course they do. But one of the things is they're not visually attractive. Let's be honest, caravans and motorhomes are not visually attractive. So like anything like that, you've got to be considerate about where they're placed. It would be one of the issues. So is this going to be, it's worked well, blanket policy, or is there going to be more care taken?
Through the chair, if I may.
Councillor
Yeah.
Rob Murphy.
Thank you. This won't be a carte blanche afterwards because it will require individual planning permissions. And while one of the speakers made the point that a presence on the site can deter some antisocial behaviour, clearly some car parks may have very, very close neighbours already, and that encouraging overnight staying, no matter how well managed and quiet it was, may not be appropriate. So we would need to look at each on a case-by-case basis, and some of the car parks may not be suitable for for caravan stopping, while some may warrant a physical expansion on the basis of accommodating overnight stays. But we need to look at that on an individual business case on a car park by car park basis. And clearly, and I think it was a very well made point that the speaker made as well, and that in general, a car parking problem facing this county is that on a numerical basis, we probably have enough car parking, but at certain peak times, and those peak times are increasing. I mean, it used to be 14 weekends or so during the year, that we cannot cope with the visitor numbers. And it will be a really important plank to this approach to look at doing that thing we've talked about for a long time of spreading the impact of tourism along with its benefits to other parts of the county. And this can be done in a measured way as part of the drivers behind the choices we make about which sites we go for. So it can be a strategic-led approach to coverage as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Further on from what Councillor Ball and Councillor Reid said before, I understand that the Keeler already does this and charging £10 per night, and the charges for a 24-hour period in Beadnell are £6 to park a normal vehicle there. Are you aware of any problems at Keeler to the plan officers? Because that would turn that around to be a question there, but it's, they are very relaxed. And what they do is you're expected to take your rubbish home with you, expected to do this, that and the other. I'm not sure whether they actually police it to that extent. They don't appear to have any problems. But as one of the speakers said before, I would like to have it identified where they can dispose of their natural waste, if I put it in those terms.
Through the chair, I think this is one of those questions that the issues that play out may very well vary with the different sites. And this is another point of going for pilots first to understand operational issues and then looking at this on a case-by-case basis. And we will continue to liaise with other local authorities to see what they're doing, because clearly there are other local authorities who are either just ahead of us on this, and others are significantly ahead of us on this, so we can learn from their experience as well. Thank you.
Basically, I can't see us making a huge amount of money out of this.
No, it's
as the council, but the greater community may well make a lot of money.
I think we need to regard this, while this isn't a material planning consideration per se, this isn't about deriving income for the county council. This is about facilitating the managed growth of tourism and the attendant impacts that has on local business and the economy. Okay. So what I'm suggesting, this is almost an answer to Councillor Reid's question. It will probably be worth doing from a strategic perspective if it was just cost neutral or marginally was costing us something because of the effects it would have on the county positively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Julie Foster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just a little concerned about the aspect with paying for a bay, if there's a charge on there, and the fines if you're not able to park in that bay. And where I'm coming from with that is, over the years, if you look at disabled parking spaces, we get those abused by people who aren't disabled, but they park in them because there's nowhere else to park. We're now finding with electric vehicle chargers, the amount of times, the technical term is the iced, which is where you get a vehicle with an internal combustion engine parking in a spot, preventing someone from being able to then charge the car. So we are getting indiscriminate parking. If you can't get parked, it's not a case of, oh, well, I'm not supposed to park there, I won't. It's, well, I need to park somewhere, so I'm going to. So we then have that potential where a motorhome may have a pre-booked space, arrive, the car park's absolutely chock-a-block. Some families come along, for instance, they've parked in the motorhome bay because it was free, there was no motorhome in it, and then the motorhome ends up displaced, wait until there's a car park space comes available, parks in there. How are we going to police that with regards to fines being issued, please? Thank you.
And again through the chair.
Councillor Murphy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and this is very much part of the role of one of the pilots, because clearly in the scenario that you're discussing, it may require some reactive enforcement in terms of somebody with a prepaid and pre-booked slot turns up and they've got people sat in there in normal cars. It may require them to be able to contact a number to say, look, I can't get into my space. I'm going to park up somewhere else temporarily. We will need to look at how often that manifests and the best ways of tackling it. And again, this is one of the benefits of running a pilot first, and we need to be open to a situation where we run these pilots for 12 months, and there is of course the logical opportunity for the conclusion to be that actually it is more trouble than it's worth, and we are better looking at dedicated parking facilities for motorhomes, which do not share spaces. But given the immediacy of the demand and the current high levels of the staycation boom, as we're calling it, it felt that it was a good time to run a pilot now and to provide some capacity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Someone like to move a recommendation? Councillor Ian Hutchinson.
Could I propose the officer's recommendation with the added conditions that the previous application had?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair.
Can I
Thank you.
just make one clarification on the previous conditions that were added? There was a restoration of land. I'm not sure whether this is applicable on this site. So would it just be the bin capacity assessment and signage, which is delegated?
Chair, I suggest it's worth having it on, because there may be some works necessary that we can't anticipate as we sat here today, and it'd be good to have a condition on for those to be made good if the pilot didn't progress any further. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Yes. Good. Thank you. Any debate, ladies and gentlemen? No? Straight to the vote? I would just like to mention one very brief point. I particularly liked Tracy Barkwill's comment about these motorhomes setting up a Keep Britain Tidy campaign. You know, well done. With that said, do you want to close the debate?
Yeah,
Councillor
very
Hutchinson?
quickly. Really, there's no reason to refuse this. If we did refuse it, what would the reason be? We've already approved one with one abstention, which I hope there's no abstentions this time. So let's just go to the vote and let's have this one through.
Councillor Georgina Hill?
I've summed up, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to allow her to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously,
She was named.
it's the same principle as the first one. I'm just not sure it's the right solution and it's ambitious enough. I'll wait to see how the trial goes. And I don't appreciate councillors trying to put pressure on people and how they vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair, may I now finish?
If it's rational and made objective sense,
It was-
way, Councillor Reid,
Thank you, Councillor.
not what your mates tell you to do.
The comment was made in jest.
I know it was.
I'm afraid, I'm really upset about this, actually.
Well, no, don't be upset, because there's nothing to be upset about.
I'm afraid there is.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that application, the proposal has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Same as last time. All those against? Abstentions? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our third application this afternoon. We've already heard the report from our planning officer. This is for change of use of car park to an area of land to allow individuals to sleep in self-sufficient motorhomes. This is land southwest of Bamborough Castle car park on the Links Road at Bamborough. We have no public speaking on this particular application. So we go straight to questions from the members. Have any members got any questions they wish to put to our planning officers? Councillor Jeffreid.
Thank you. It was just something that on the previous application that Councillor Watson said about how his parish council provide these spaces for, you know, what I don't know whether he mentioned the cost or not, but anyway, do we have any? It's only just kind of occurred to me now that we're doing this, but there is provision. If we've got any idea what other provision is, and would there be any mileage in trying to hook all that up in this booking arrangement that we're going to have? And therefore it might actually, particularly the Amber one, for instance, if that was for 6, and if there was 8 people needed it, perhaps the other 2 people could be pointed in the direction of, you know, if we're going to make this integrated thing, if we're going to try and, you know, boost tourism, perhaps it would be a good idea to try and find out what the whole capacity of Northumberland was and link it in somehow, and you know, turn it into the kind of place that most people seem to want.
Good idea.
Through the chair, if that's okay. Yes, that's a good point, and it's very much the type of issue that we are looking at through the development of the Northumberland Tourism Destination Management Plan. Because again, as one of the speakers said, you can set trails up of related sites and link in existing facilities into that. I think the point here is, though, this is a pilot and we want to be really able to access information just on these sites, to how they're used, what pressures they are. I think someone said about the amount of people who visit the site saying click on it once it is at capacity, and that will be best served in that initial 12-month period by having a closed system approach to understanding this. But I think for later on, that's absolutely the intention. Councillor Reid. Thank you.
Any more questions? No more questions? Could I have a proposal? Councillor Darwin.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that this application be granted permission for a period of 12 months, also subject to the previous conditions as outlined by Rob as well.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Stewart. Any debate? Councillor Guy Rayner-Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you didn't already know, I'm the local member for here.
I think we do.
I don't go on about it much, it's all right. I'm quite happy to support this one for much the same reasons as the Beanal application. The camping vans are there already. It's very difficult to police what they do. In terms of some of the other comments about making it into a bigger scheme, not unsympathetic to that if we had additional land to do it on. We have to remember that these are working car parks, and if they're full of caravans in the morning, I would end up with umpteen phone calls about the 200 cars that were then all over the village. It's very much a balancing act, but this is what the trial is all about. I'm sure that the people in this room who have motorhomes are exemplary citizens, but not everyone is. I've taken phone calls from farmers in and around Bamborough who've been screamed and shouted at because they've woken people up trying to get into their fields in the morning. So the whole issue needs clarified. We have the carrot here of the nice new place where people can go, but there needs to be a stick as well, which I think is a change in national legislation currently, if you park in someone's field gateway, no one really knows who is responsible for that. Is it the council? Is it the police? Is it the landowner? It leads to altercations. If a farmer can't get in his field in the middle of harvest, he's losing money. You know, the council can't do anything. We can't tow the caravans. We can't do anything. But that is a conversation to be had at a national level. At the moment, we are here providing the carrot for people to go instead of parking in gateways and the like.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, in supporting this application, which I will, just a couple of things I think need saying from what's been said by colleagues. But first, what Mr Murphy said. He's absolutely right. One of the things that came out with the coastal conference was Northumberland's a big county. I made reference to it with the first application, but we're focusing on a very small part of Northumberland here. Somebody mentioned signage of how to get these car parks. I want to see more signs to say how to get to the rest of Northumberland. Bring them down to South East Northumberland. Yes, you're right. Councillor Dodds mentioned his trip to Blythe. Phenomenal the number of people who go to Blythe. But we've got Newbiggin with excess space. Got my resort, where I live, my resort, I'd love to call it that. Nice Scream Man doesn't know where Camus is, but that's another story. No, joking aside, you know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. I've driven through the Lake District following motorhomes. Motorhomes don't drive through the Lake District because of the scenery. They go there because they're going to stay somewhere. And they have learned how to welcome them as visitors. And it's something we need to do, Chair. And the motorhome owner perhaps could help us as well. If we're prepared to put money into these 3 sites, perhaps they'd like to go to the websites that's out there, perhaps they'd like to go to the publications that's out there and say, will you stop advertising where the free sites are? For example, one of the top 10 sites to park in the United Kingdom, surprise, surprise, is Camus. And that's one of the reasons why I asked for those car parks to be regulated, so we could move them on and allow other people to park there. These are the little things we need to do, Chair. But as I say, it's about regulations. It's about regularising the situation. What we don't want is motorhomes parked on verges, on curbsides, being a menace to everybody else. When we put them into council car parks on a temporary basis, we can monitor them and we will take enforcement action. And finally, Chair, I think it'd be wrong for me not to compliment one officer in the county in particular, and that's Ken MacDonald, the Gypsy Roma Traveller Officer, who's been a terrific friend to us in South East Northumberland. When he has seen existing litter bins full, he's rang local services. And people like Colin Green has responded magnificently and brought out additional bins that day. This is officers working together for the betterment of visitors and residents. Thank you, Chair.
Hear, hear. Well done. And Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, what is the technology in that car park like nowadays? Because I used it a little while ago, and there was a 25-minute queue to pay for the car park. And then on top of that, you thought, oh, I can download the app. So people were trying to download the app, but the phone signal took about 25 minutes to download the app. So I just want to make the plea, if we are going to go ahead with this, can we make sure the technology is working? Because it wasn't the day I was there. Thank you.
Point made. Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to make the point that I've listened to members' questions, concerns, and what they've highlighted, and the vast majority seems to me to be for consideration after we've done the trial. That's the whole point of doing these trials, to get this information so we can act on it. And I hope after we've done them, we come up with an ambitious plan for further development on them. So again, this is another one I'll support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No more comments?
Chair, shall I just clarify what we're voting?
Yes, if you would.
Yes, it's to grant permission for a period of 12 months subject to the conditions, with 3 additional conditions in respect of bin capacity assessment, signage, restoration of land. All of those 3 conditions, the wording to be delegated to the Director of Planning in consultation with the Chair, and also the financial contribution towards the Council's Coastal Mitigation Service.
Thank you. Did you want to sum up, Councillor Darwin?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am happy to propose this on quite nicely just read out there as well. And I think it has been another good debate there as well. And quite right, this is a trial period. I think a lot of the questions have been aimed at the end of that trial period, which will come back to us. And I think we had 2 good speakers there to this before as well. And it was good to know why the members of motorhomes want to use a car park, so they're nearer to the facilities, which is quite good. So happy to vote on this one.
Thank you. All those in favour of that recommendation to approve? Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions?
You're going to get this cancelled for irregularities and trying to be friendly, aren't you?
1 abstention. That brings the planning applications to an end. We've got 2 other items on the agenda for members' information. That's the appeals update on page 59. And we've got the Section 106 Agreements Update Report on page 71. Members happy with that? I have no urgent business. Thank you all for attending, and thank you for your debate this afternoon. Thank you.